King reports on corporate governance has been touted as groundbreaking since the issue of the first report in 1994. It is a code of corporate governance, a non-legislative code in South Africa issued by the King Committee. In total, 3 reports were issued. Now, compliance with the King report is a requirement for companies listed on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. These reports have been cited as the most effective summary of the best international practices in corporate governance. Retired Supreme Court Judge Mervyn chairs the Committee on Corporate Governance, and in 1993, when he was asked to do so, he said it was a great opportunity to educate the newly democratic South African public on the working of a free economy. Well, he is here with me in studio to discuss corporate governance in an ever-changing and somewhat turbulent at times global economy. Professor, what a pleasure and honor to meet with you today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Nishina.
Let's begin by highlighting the relevance of these reports in a free economy.
Well, the relevance of it is that if you look at a company, there's always 2 things happening inside a company. There are business judgment calls being made, and there's the processes as to how you make those business judgment calls. That's what governance is about, to try and direct the decision makers' minds to what is best international practice as to how you make those business judgment calls, whether as a director or a manager.
Sure. How is the committee continuing with its work on corporate governance?
Well, the committee was formed in 1992. I was requested to form the committee by inter alia, the Institute of Directors, the JSE, SICA, and various other bodies. And we have met every quarter since 1992. That was some advice I got from Sir Adrian Cadbury, who had done the Cadbury report in 89-90 in the United Kingdom, not to disband my committee, because he disbanded his. And the result was there were reports subsequently on internal auditing and various aspects of governance. So then they had to take all these separate reports, and they called it the UK Combined Governance Report. We have met every quarter and kept up to date with what is happening internationally as
and
to
that's
best
very
practices.
important.
Absolutely. And consequently, we've issued 3 reports which keep the South African companies, listed companies particularly, up to date. And our listed companies today are regarded as the best governed in the world, and our stock exchange is regarded as the World Economic Forum and the World Federation of Stock Exchanges has rated our stock exchange as the best regulator as a stock exchange in the world for the last 3 years.
And no doubt that has contributed to attracting foreign direct investment to South Africa.
That attracts investment. That if you and I were trustees of a pension fund, it's comforting for us to know the company we're going to invest in is well governed.
So the committee is playing a very vigilant role when it comes to assessing trends in the global economy that could impact on corporate governance.
Absolutely.
What comes to mind? What has happened recently? Has there been major shifts that should be included in the King reports?
Well, there are major shifts which impact on governance, such as the global financial crisis, the BP oil spill. There are many. There are corporate failures, corporate incidents, corporate
scandals, disasters,
economic disasters like the global financial crisis.
And all of this happened after King 3 was issued.
Yes, all this comes. So there are events which keep impacting on how you govern, how you direct, and how you manage. The question of governing a company is not a static, it's a dynamic. It will always change as society evolves, as society changes. And that's why there have been 3 reports, and now there's going to be a 4th report. We're actually working on King 4 because, as you will appreciate, since the global financial crisis, financial reporting standards have changed. Just as an example, we've had our new Companies Act in South Africa, which has incorporated a lot of the aspects which were in King 2 into which were then a comply or explain basis. Now you have to do it because it's in the Companies Act and it's a matter of law. So all these things need to be brought together in another edition of the King report, which will be known as King 4.
What kind of input are you looking for from companies in South Africa? Because obviously they will have to comply with it as well.
Yes, if they're listed, it's a apply or explain basis. If not, why not? But what we look for is input on the practical application of best practice. What difficulties have they found and how has it benefited the company? Integrated thinking and doing an integrated report, which is our recommendation in King 3, has changed corporate behavior, because the question of value is no longer seen through the narrow financial lens as the present value of discounted future cash flows. It's looked at as how the company makes its money, and in doing so, how does it impact on the three critical aspects at which business is at the junction, namely the economy, society, and the environment. Because a company can make 100 million rand bottom line, but if it's impacting adversely on society and the environment, it could actually be, in a total concept, destroying value.
And the great example was the one that you pointed out, the BP oil spill, but also the German Wings disaster comes to mind for me as well.
Exactly.
What do you make of how these companies handled these disasters?
Well, it's very important. There's a chapter in King 3 on stakeholder relationships, and it's very important that a board identifies its main stakeholder groupings, that there's an ongoing communication between the company via its management. Some major companies have started a whole new corporate animal called the Corporate Stakeholder Relationship Officer, and his or her sole job is to talk to the stakeholders, learn of their legitimate and reasonable needs, interests and expectations, inform management. Management can then develop strategy on a more informed basis to meet those expectations. At each board meeting, there should be, and we will recommend in King 4, that there should be an agenda item on stakeholder relationships, so that you have this ongoing building of trust and confidence between the company and the stakeholders. If you just go back to the BP oil spill, assuming that BP had had a corporate stakeholder relationship officer and had spent 2 years before they started drilling, telling the community that geologists tell us there's a lot of oil at the bottom of the sea, but it's going to be the deepest drilling ever under the sea, and there are risks. But if we strike oil here, all I can tell you is your value of your properties are going to go up. We're going to need a good few hotels. We're going to need a lot more businesses around here, DIY stores, etc. And that's exactly what happened. So the community flourished, but they hadn't got the buy-in from the community. I think a good example is speaking to the chief executive of Goldfields recently, Nick Holland. They're opening a new gold mine in Peru. They've spent they haven't turned one sod of soil yet. They have spent the last 2 years talking to the community and getting their buy-in to this mine and how it's going to improve and how they're going to rehabilitate the land after they've stopped mining.
Now that's the kind of stakeholder relationship we need to see forthcoming from parastatals like Eskom as well.
Absolutely.
You know, they need community, they need citizen buy-in. I mean, if we have to look at their affairs, much can be said about the state of corporate governance. The same for SAA and other parastatals.
Absolutely. I believe, unfortunately, our state-owned enterprises are compliance-driven. They are in a compliance environment reinforced by fear, criminal sanction, under the Public Finance Management Act, as opposed to a private sector company, which is an enterprise-driven environment, and it's driven by trust and confidence. And so you can just see the two are different. And you actually spend a lot of time on compliance in a state-owned enterprise, which you don't necessarily spend in a private sector company, because the whole principle in the King report is these are the best international practices, but you as a board of directors must apply your collective mind to what is the most appropriate process or practice for this issue that day in the best interest of the company. If you think it's not appropriate what we have recommended, you're perfectly entitled to adopt another process. But then explain to your stakeholders why you've adopted another process. Because, as I say in the introductory paragraph in King 3, the ultimate compliance officer is not a compliance officer, it's your stakeholders. And the stakeholders of Eskom are actually speaking out. You can see they're saying you're not complying, you are in fact not carrying out your duty of providing us with energy. as you should.
As it stands, the code is non-legislative, but
Correct.
companies are obliged to, they have to comply with this code.
Well, the code is apply or explain basis as a listing requirement. So that you and I as directors of this business could actually say, we're not applying the King report, and then just explain why not, if it was a listed company. And that would be a compliance. But the question is, would your explanation be accepted by your stakeholders? If they don't accept it, if it's not justified, then they react. If it's a listed company, they'll sell the company shares. If it's not listed, they'll stop buying the company's product or whatever.
And that's the big game changer of the King reports. Thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to hearing more about King 4.
Thank you very much.